Okay guys, in this video we are going to talk about the 5 kinds of light, or I'm breaking it down to just 5 to keep it simple for y'all, and how we're going to be applying this to the figure. So you have your highlight, which is the brightest part of where the light is hitting. In here is your transitional light or middle values, most commonly called mid-tones, right in here. If this were a colored object, this would be the only area which was the actual pure color of that thing, because out here would be a tint. It would be washed out a bit by the light, and here it's got a shadow, so it's a little darker. So right in here in your mid-tones is where your actual color of that thing is. Right here you can kind of see this stripe here. This is what you guys are going to start looking for in the figure. It's called your core shadow. Okay, under here is your reflected light. Now this is light that's hitting this surface and bouncing back in. It's reflected off the tabletop. Okay, that's reflected light. And then here's your cast shadow. So this is when you walk down the street on the sidewalk, you see your shadow on the ground. That's your cast shadow. In here, underneath here, is where this combination is going to be receiving the least amount of light. It's called your occlusion shadow. It's the darkest area, is right underneath the base of that thing. You don't need to know that too much, except when you're putting cast shadows on the ground under your figure. You might want to make it a little bit darker on there. It's receiving the least amount of light. There's a little bit of ambient light that kind of bounces around in that cast shadow. And you also can notice along the edge here, it kind of gives a little bit of a core as it moves into the light of the tabletop. So it kind of repeats again. You got your core, your halftones into your light here, but it's very, very subtle on that cast shadow. So this applies to everything. Since the light's coming from above, well, actually, it looks like this is your highlight, really, from this side. Mid-tones, core shadow. Now imagine this were a leg or an arm, and you have this core shadow here, reflected light. Now this is really important. On a lot of the examples with the models, they're using, let's see if I can do it. They're using something out here. See how that's filling in? If you put something reflective over here, it's going to add more light because it's bouncing more light inside. So they're doing a lot of that on the models. So it looks pretty bright on this reflected light side. Oops. My paintbrush. You want to keep this darker than whatever's happening over here. So you have to determine your light source. This is going to be my light source coming in this way. My reflected light's going to be a little bit darker. So you hit that core shadow first, then you fill in your reflected light, cast shadow. Now, I wonder if I can turn this on its side. It's going to want to roll. There we go. Okay, so imagine that were like a leg, and there's an arm resting on top of that. So what happens right here is your occlusion shadow. It's darker and it's sharper. The edge is sharper. Notice as the edges get close to that object, they're a little bit sharper and they get fuzzier as they move away, right? So but let's pretend this is an arm laying on top of a leg. So it's a little sharper there. It gets fuzzier as it hits that core shadow, and what happens past the core shadow? It disappears, so you no longer see it, because this light here is from the table, so there's nothing blocking that light to cause a shadow. Here, this is blocking the light source. That's why you have that little cast shadow underneath there. Okay, really important to know that this cast shadow disappears in that core shadow. It does not continue underneath. So if you had something, let's do it with the sphere. If you had something out here, see, now I'm blocking the light from the table, so now there's a shadow there, a little cast shadow, right? Because I'm blocking this light, but it's also bouncing some of this color into there. You can see that color, so you can see how color is influenced, but we're not going to talk about color too much. So let's do it here too. So we have the cast shadow. That's a sharp edge here. It gets softer as it wraps around, right? Sharper here, softer as it hits that core. It disappears on the other side. But you can see it coming out over there, but that's, neither here nor there. So that's about it. So try to understand on the figure. I'll do some demonstrations. You'll see how this coarse shadow is relevant for all your limbs and your whole body as you move down the form, the 5 kinds of light, and how you're going to be applying it to the form now. Okay?